Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, turning our attention to the NDDC, the Ministry of the Niger Delta. After all, today, the National Assembly, there will be some decision that may be taken. Today, we've got Mr. Alfred Kamepabo here with us. He is the Secretary General of Ijoye Council. They could actually confuse you with that picture with this
one. Because of my hat.
Is it a requisite, a requirement when you're at IYC that you must have this cap?
No, I had the other suit as IYC. We come corporate, we come traditional too.
Okay. But what's been happening to IYC lately? In terms, are they still, out there, functional, taking those decisions, galvanizing the youths in the region?
You mean holding to account the process of governance and interrogating it, right?
And ensuring that the youths, also know how to stand the heat and then know what to do when the time comes.
Yeah, we're doing that. We're doing a couple of that. That's why we organize the kind of trainings we have and try to expose youth to several programs. We're doing our best.
Concerning this developments within the NDDC, we understand that there will be some sort of endorsement or approval of what the minister is doing about the ministry and the NDDC. Are you all on the same page with what's going on about this NDDC controversy?
Yeah, we are not endorsing anything, but instead we are interrogating the whole process and the conversation and advising appropriately that things should be done properly. We've heard about the nomination of members to the board that has been screened. Like you mentioned in your intro, there's an expected confirmation by the Senate that will lead to an inauguration. That's what we expect. What we don't understand yet is this interruption in the process of time by this interim management committee, which is alien to us. Some may have argued the legality of it, but no matter how they argue, for us it is unlawful. It is really not recognized by the act that established the NDDC.
But what do you think necessitated it?
Well, for me, I think...
may have necessitated it.
For me, I think it's just cheap power play because...
on whose part?
On the part of those in the presidency. And for now, I'm not trying to make an excuse for the president, but I think the president should subject himself to a better counsel with respect to this because, you see, there are things that are normal all over the world. When there were no ministers, permanent secretaries take over their ministries. And when ministers are appointed and subsequently sworn in, they took over the ministries. There was no board at a particular time in the NDDC. The highest ranking civil servant, one Mrs. Akwaga also, took over. A board has been nominated. So what we expect is for that board, as it has been screened and maybe subsequently confirmed today, to be inaugurated, to take charge of the process of taking the NDDC further. Yes.
But do you think the process of getting the board in place has worked over the years? Because, politically it might have served the purpose, but then functionally, operationally, do you think the NDDC has been able to achieve its core functions?
No, the NDDC has been massively, or should I say fantastically corrupt in the past. I say fantastically corrupt in the sense that the amount of massive corruption in the NDDC is such that if you investigate it, you may not see anything, but the corruption is still there. And that takes me...
Just a minute.
Okay.
Is this... because trying to understand the
No, to land on this question,
now.
that may have hindered the development of the NDDC, which may have resulted to the over-politicization of even the NDDC in recent times.
Now,
so,
the IYC, is this the position of the IYC, or this is what you think about what is going on within the NDDC?
This is not just the position of the IYC, this is the position of the various organizations in the Niger Delta, because we are sad about the underdevelopment of the Niger Delta. That is not, and the projects that we have seen, that is not commensurate with the amount of money that has come into the NDC. That is why, if you observe very well, when the president set up this forensic audits, when he talked about setting up a forensic audit for the NDDC, you can see everybody in the Niger Delta is glad about it. That yes, let the NDDC be forensically audited, so we can begin to audit the project. But you see, but what we also, let me also mention here that we are not yet seeing the capacity of anybody within the Nigerian space now that the president has appointed or the president is yet to appoint or is pointing at that can really audit the NDDC. What we even expect the president and the presidency to do is to involve probably the services of an internationally reputable organization to audit the NDDC. Because you see, the NDDC is not just fantastically corrupt. They are so rich that they can drown any audit committee. Okay. But what we are not also comfortable.
How did you come to that conclusion?
I know so.
All right. Let's bring in Makwe. She also has some questions for you. Makwe?
Well, I find it very interesting that on the one hand, everyone in the Niger Delta, from your account, seems to be very interested in this forensic audit. But then there's also the part where everybody's looking at the legality or otherwise of those who are competent to handle the audit. Isn't that covering or isn't that overshadowing the fact that people are glad? Because on the one hand, we cannot claim to be glad about something, but on the other, say that, we're not very confident or we're not sure that the president has gone about it in the right manner.
Makwe, if you listened to me earlier, that's why I suggested that the president should employ the services of an internationally reputable organization to conduct the audit. To that extent, we can have some form of confidence so that we can, because this is not the first time an audit has been set up for the NDDC and it has come to naught. And like I tell you, that organization, it's so powerful. So we welcome it, but we see a lot of characters. Now, one of the things we can quickly see now, but does it not bother you that...
I want to expatiate. If you may, if I may butt in there, you talked about the inauguration of the board, which has been screened by the Senate. Some people will say that it is the president's prerogative to decide when he wants to do it. There is no time stipulated by the law under which he must conduct an inauguration for the board of the NDDC. How can you be talking about that in the same breath talk about, why this is going on under an interim management? That's the audit.
If I get your question right, Mark, but the inauguration of the board does not in any way hinder the forensic auditing of the board. Because firstly, the members of the new board, as it is now, we are not part of the NDDC that you want to forensically audit. And just because we want to forensically audit the NDDC does not mean that we should stop the work in progress in the NDDC, which means the development of the NDDC. So by that, if that happens, are people suggesting that because they want to forensically audit the board, that the NDDC should not be working, a board should not come to place to carry on the projects of the NDDC, probably for the next 1 year, just because somebody wants to forensically audit it. So what we are saying is that the NDDC should move on, should be allowed to carry on its duties while the forensic audit is going on. Except we are saying, which is not, that members of the current board were part of the previous corruption, which is obviously not. That is why some of us are not too comfortable with this recent power play of an interim management committee, because that is why we are also saying that what is the interim management committee really coming to do? It's blurred, it's ambiguous, it's not clear in any way. So members of because the NDDC has to come full-fledged with all of its appointments. Don't forget that the board appointments of the NDDC does not just contain the MD, the EDP, the Executive Director Project and the Executive Director Finance and Administration. It contains everybody, including the state reps, and so we need that full-fledged because the Niger Delta needs that speed to move on. So that doesn't hinder it, and nobody should lay claim to that argument. There's no hindrance. The two work
have been done.
Comfortable with the interim board. If for now the interim managing director says that more than 50 contractors have moved back to site, that work is going on, even as a forensic audit is about to happen, if it's not happening yet, what is making you uncomfortable with this interim board?
Are you suggesting that wouldn't have been done by the board that is rightly put? Are we also suggesting that Probably the 3 members in the interim board are angels that were brought from heaven, different from the normal humans that were appointed. The point is, they are all neutral bodies. So let the NDDC come in full-fledged. And let me also say, let the presidency not suggest to Nigerians that there's a form of confusion in the presidency, which is what it seems, and which shouldn't be. And that is why earlier on I described it as a petty power play that is to the detriment of the people of the Niger Delta. You have nominated a board, except the presidency is saying that he does not have confidence in the board that she has nominated, which is also laughable. But for the pedigree of people like Maxwell Oko, who is not just who is just not knowledgeable about the issues of the Niger Delta, but it was part of the struggles that led to the birthing of the NDDC. When we see people like that in the interim board, we are comfortable. But summarily, what I'm telling you is that the 3-member committee that was nominated as interim management committee are just normal human beings from the Niger Delta. Then the full board is normal human beings from the Niger Delta with capacity to suit. So what the full board will do, what the 3-man would have done, the full board will even do more. So why the petty power play? So you begin to ask questions like, why in one breath the president will submit names to the Senate for confirmation, having the full board, 100% of it, and in another breath, the president wants 30% of that capacity to match. So it's fishy. So that's why we're taking this advantage to tell the president that it should be the president and the presidency that it should be properly guided. It should not play into the petty politics of the NDDC. Don't forget that one of the problems of the NDDC has always been the over-politicization of the NDDC. The NDDC has always been a tool for political funding, which is what we should walk away from. Forensic audit, fantastic. Let's know why the NDDC, after receiving about 2 trillion, cannot even complete its headquarters.
When you talk about a power play between who and who? Who is making this power play? Is the presidency playing with itself?
Well, let me bluntly tell you, to start with, that they are trying to fuse the Niger Delta Development Commission under the Ministry of Niger Delta doesn't make fiscal sense, doesn't make economic sense. By that I mean, the budget of the Niger Delta Development Commission, the NDDC, is about 81 billion naira. The budget of the Ministry of Niger Delta is about a paltry 23 or 24 billion naira. Now, who is to control who? So you can see that already we're having this conflict of an economic tussle, so to say. So you can see that that's already a recipe for disaster. So the power play has started. So we will suggest that let the NDDC, if possible, be moved back to the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, which is directly under the presidency, because the NDDC, by its original plan, is an interventionist agency set up to take care of the issues of the Niger Delta. And when we say the issues of the Niger Delta, we are not just talking about the construction of roads, the construction of bridges, the construction of the infrastructure that will tickle the prosperity of the Niger Delta, which is very important and utmost important, but these things have a multiplier effect on the security of the Niger Delta, which also has a multiplier effect on the continuous production of the oil that sustains the economy. So it's a long value chain. And that shouldn't be, you understand, that shouldn't be toyed with.
Let's hypothesize. For instance, we don't know what the Senate will decide today. And assuming, without conceding that will be the case, if they go ahead and have the NDDC in the ministry, what happens?
Well, we may continue to have this kind of power play, avoidable power play that has caused this unnecessary, frivolous distraction. And that's what we are avoiding. But however it is, the minister there, Godswill Akpabio, is an experienced governor. And that is why we are also appealing to him that what is happening at this particular moment, he may have been involved in taking the decision that he thought at a particular time was good for the people of the Niger Delta, but he should listen to the ground. He will now understand. I'm coming. He will now understand that the decision is not going well. The decision is unpopular.
What decision is that?
The decision that an interim management committee should replace a full board.
But
do you
doesn't
understand?
you also said the other time, isn't that justified in what you said earlier, that there's been massive corruption in the NDDC and it needs to be checked?
Maybe you didn't listen to me.
I listened to you quite well.
Hold on. Let me give it to you. There is massive corruption in the NDDC that needs to be checked with a forensic audit. Furthermore, we are even recommending that the forensic audit should be undertaken by probably an internationally reputable organization that its chances of being compromised is slim. But I have also stated here that the members as nominated into this current board are not parts of the boards.
And you don't think
the boards that we want to investigate. So how does that stall the progress? So what is important is that while the forensic audit is going on, the inauguration of the board, the confirmation and inauguration of the board should go on so that the projects in the Niger Delta and the associated development in the Niger Delta that is expected of the NDDC midwife should go on.
What if that board that you're talking about is in office and the previous boards also come to corrupt them?
So if the previous board can come to corrupt the present board, you think the previous board cannot corrupt more of a three-man committee that has people like a medical doctor, Cairo Jimbo, as EDP? What does he know about project management? But I heard him in your studio talking about how he read engineering in 1979. Come on, who does that in a developing economy?
But you know that this IMC that you're talking about now is directly being supervised by the minister himself, who
Did you hear the word supervise? Supervision is different from execution. We're talking about a board that will sit day to day, attend to the problem, and execute. Let me tell you something.
Are you by any chance suggesting that the Ministry of Niger Delta and the NDDC, Niger Delta Development Commission, could be working against each other? Do you think they are doing the same things, so and consequently one of them should be scrapped?
It shouldn't be, but that is what it seems now. That is why earlier on I had even suggested that the NDDC should be moved back to the presidency. But if it must stay in the Ministry of Niger Delta, the minister, having a minister like somebody like Akpabio with capacity, should find a way to complement them and avoid this unnecessary confusion that we are into, because we don't understand the intent for this confusion. It should be avoided. You know, let me tell you something. The whole of that NDDC is a kind of a funny place that should be managed well. Let me tell you, the Niger Delta Development Commission, by rumor, has appropriated some billions into the clearing of water hyacinth. Which reasonable organization in this world thinks like that?
Is it not going to be part of the probe? Is that not going to be part of what will be audited?
That's part of what will be audited. But don't forget that even the minister that came in, under his supervision, has approved the payment of water hyacinth. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can see that the NDDC is not strategic. Water hyacinth in itself, the amount of money used to clear water, just 10% of that amount could have set up an industry that would take advantage of the water hyacinth to produce paper that would have been adding value to the. But that's not the main point. The main point I'm trying to make here is that the forensic auditing should take place, but the board, as will be confirmed by the Senate any moment from now, should be inaugurated and allowed to begin to think for the people of the Niger Delta and push the project and dissociate themselves from the usual political brigandage and recklessness and the exporting of the NDDC funds for politics, which is what has always been. So that is what should be avoided, and that is what the minister should concentrate on. The second thing the minister should concentrate on is that he has a paltry 24 billion naira as his allocation. He should think about getting our support to up his budget so that he can attend to the East-West Road and other developmental issues that needs to be attended to. He does not need this distraction.
It's interesting you use the word paltry for 24 billion.
But that's what it is compared to the development that is needed there.
I hear you.
No, Chamale, don't take it somewhere else.
We all heard you.
Please take it to no, but not in that manner.
You said so, didn't you? I'm only saying what you said. All right, there you go. That's Alfred Kemepabo, who is the Secretary General of EGLU Council. Thank you for coming on this.
Thanks for having me.
We're back in a moment. Stay with us. right, it's time to take a look at what you think about some of the issues we broached today on the program. Let's start with this particular one. He's talking about the NDDC controversy. And in his perspective, given all that is going on, Duke Oputa says, chasing NDDC's 3 trillion naira scandal and 12,000 abandoned projects is like putting a bucket under a leaking roof instead of fixing the roof. Create a well-resourced, smart police force led by an expert with top quality personnel, no quotas, and let them do the job.
Of rice now. It says, talking about rice, it's high time the federal government imposed itself on the price of rice the farmers sell. It says 50 kilograms should go for about 6,000 to 8,000 naira, while the market price goes for 18 to 22,000 naira. It's not only fuel that needs regulation.
That's a suggestion there. Here is Mark saying, farming in Kogi. NISAL team has visited and inspected farmlands and farmers. We have done all documentation and met with all the requirements for almost a year now. Is the Anchor Borrowers program a scam in Kogi East? Our people have not benefited from the program.
Well, on the border closure, Diola Sulaiman from Ibadan says, why has the cost of local rice gone from 11,000 naira to 24,000 naira per bag since the borders were closed?
I think the answers were in the text that Mark read, perhaps.
Okay, so there you go. What are we having the price commodity board? I know in the 60s we used to. Anyway, let me leave that. Well, there you go, guys. That's some feedback coming from me there. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. So why is Ayo laughing?
You know you are that old. Have a wonderful day.
In what 60s was Chamberlain talking about? Well, thank you for watching. I'm Maukwe Ogun Yusuf.
The 60s before. Not this one.